This evening, we are going to be delving into topics for my book, Fashion Stylist, 7 Proven Steps to Build a Banging Portfolio, a Powerful Network, and Make Shit Happen. And I am delighted to be joined by a brilliant guest this evening who's going to discuss topics from the book. I have the wonderful David M. Watts, who is a fashion business consultant and also the host of Just a Fashion Minute podcast, which is a super podcast everyone needs to go and follow. So thank you so much, David, for joining me this evening.
Great. Nice to be here. We haven't had our coffee catch up for a while, so it's nice to chat on the interweb.
Yeah, I think this is how it is now. We just have to do online. So let me get straight in. I wanted to jump in with a question about taste because this is what you are absolutely known for. So something that I really explore in my book is training your eye and fine-tuning your visual sensibility. So really learning to decode imagery, references, culture, not just artistically, but commercially. Because for me, that's what builds true taste as opposed to just following trends. And I really loved your recent post about the chief taste officer role that you think all fashion brands should have. So you've described them as being a moat in the era of AI and constant noise. So from your perspective, what does good taste actually look like today? And how can a young stylist start developing this instinct?
It's a corker of a question to start me off. And it's something I think about all the time. As you say, I wrote a post about being a chief taste officer because it's a job that I would absolutely love. I think, taste is all relative. Taste is all subjective. But we do have, I suppose, in our society, what we can just be levels of taste that are good and bad. But that's all open for discussion. I think for what really is good taste, you need to think about, the stylist needs to think about self-expression. They need to think about curation, but also, conscious curation. They need to be able to, as you would know, being a professional, but, pick from old and from new, sort of vintage, contemporary, high and low. All of those things come together in a way that give you an opportunity to develop a taste level. Now, it may not be to everybody's taste, but it's so important for stylists, I believe, anybody creative, to create
Yeah.
a USP. You are creating a unique DNA for your taste, for your style, and that's going to get you recognized, or hopefully it's going to get you a job. Because if you don't, you're just going to be like everybody else.
Exactly. I think that's it. In this era of AI and everyone kind of regurgitating stuff that's just pumped out for them, everyone is starting to look and sound like everybody else. So you really hit the nail on the head there. I love that.
I think also it's about having the confidence, and confidence is built over time. Nobody has all that confidence right up front when you start out your career. So, it pays to keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, listen, ask questions, build up your personal taste level, but your confidence level. Be completely committed to how you want to present something fresh and new. In real terms, nothing is new. Nothing is new in fashion, but yet you have people who can transport us to new places just by the visual image. So, find that something that's very special and unique to you. Individuality is a superpower. Nobody else is like you. So, make it work.
I love that. I'm going to claim that individuality is a superpower. That's pure gold. So, in my book, I break down the professional standards of working in the fashion industry, things like how to approach PRs, pitch magazine, but also the why. Why things like fashion credits, deadlines, or advertiser relationships really matter. And Having worked as a commissioning editor, I've seen how often creatives misunderstand how fashion, publishing, and the broader commercial ecosystem actually operates. So I wanted to ask you, from your experience as editor-in-chief of What's What magazine, what are stylists consistently getting wrong about how the industry works, and how can they position themselves more professionally from day one?
It's a very pointed question, but it's also, I think, in terms of getting wrong, without sort of being sort of pejorative. I think a lot of people, a lot of younger people, as we know, and not even younger people, are focusing on social media. So social media, that camera feed is the only thing that they really look at. And of course, that's incredibly limited. And we know the algorithm has flattened everything because that's what it does. It collects and gathers things that we think that it thinks that we want to actually see because of the things we click on and the things we post and things we like, things we comment on. So it goes out and searches for exactly the same things. So over time, it flattens down what we're seeing and what we're actually engaging with. So it all becomes quite samey. And the danger is you fall into just thinking that's all there is. And really, you know, not just the social media, but the social media then tips over into people copying a style, consciously or unconsciously, and we all do it, but actually, if you're going to copy something, you have to copy the idea of what it was and then make that your idea and then make it fresh and new. You can't just, copy paste. And I think we have a lot of that going on. So what are they getting wrong? They're not really prepared to go out and find things to stimulate their own brain and their own ideas. I have a great quote I read that, if you want new ideas, read old books. And it's so true. You look at old
Yeah.
about fashion and about style and about costume and about history, and just reading about and seeing illustrations, pencil drawings, and it's just extraordinary. And you'll come away from that and it will trigger something. You're not going to have the idea that that person had back in 1870 or 1650, but it will trigger something that relates contemporarily to you. So I always say, go and read old books. But people are so, we know today people are so not reading many books. I stress it. I teach part-time. I take my students to the library. I say, open all, like a logo, like a branding. You've got to read to find stuff. It's that simple. Open your eyes, go out there and find things to see.
Absolutely. Inspiration is everywhere. I love that. And, what I'm saying in the book is people really have to be collectors, visual collectors from, it could be from architecture, it could be from older books, it could be images of jellyfish, it can be stuff that's not related to fashion whatsoever, but you just have to open your eyes, read, and start collecting. So I wanted to read a little extract from my book because something that you recently posted made me think of this particular extract. So representation extends far beyond who appears in front of the lens. As a stylist, your influence touches the entire creative ecosystem. Every collaboration is a chance to open doors, expand the conversation, and build a more inclusive industry, one rooted in equity, not just aesthetics. And something that really struck me from your work with the Black British Initiative is that emphasis on equity and ownership. So, how can up and coming creatives contribute to that shift and create real impact?
I think we are living in a very challenging time, and we have to be able to understand and be aware that there are huge differences and there are huge chasms between people who have and people who have not, and that isn't just financially. A lot of younger people who don't have access to proper education or the levels of education, third, secondary, third, tertiary, And that has a big impact on their opportunities in the world. But
Mm,
after that, we have gone through major upheaval with diversity and inclusion, etc., and equality. And that isn't just about skin color. That's, women in industry, particularly fashion. So it's very important to actually take stock and look around and not just take that first thing that you see as that's how life is. And some of us are more privileged than others. I teach in schools, some private schools that have very, shall we say, privileged individuals. And it's very important because, and I had a conversation not so long ago with some of my students about this particular thing, and they said, "Oh, but we don't have a problem with diversity anymore. Our generation is much more, liberal and understanding." And I said, "Well, I think I'd have to disagree with you on that. You know,
mm,
around the world. Now, I don't want to diss them, but their own personal, belief was, well, we're cool, it's fine. But unfortunately, they're not looking out into the world and seeing how the world is reflected back. And I think that's really important. And for stylists, for people who want to create something that's exciting and new and interesting, they need to look at all walks of life, all types of people, all variations of humankind. Go and travel, spend time in other countries, and that will also trigger that conscious curation. You'll suddenly see the way people in Bali do different things, fabrics and technologies, and lifestyles and culture and wellness. There's so many things are infinite, but don't just focus on where you live or what you see, because we are very easily sucked into unconscious bias. We see
mm.
that way, well, we're used to going to school with those people, we're used to seeing them in the coffee shop, we're used to shopping with them, we party with them, and therefore that's all there is. And therefore we'll start working with them or for them or to make everything look like them, when it's so important to look at how that is different out in the world. And the beauty industry is a great example. Historically, blonde, blue-eyed models, everywhere
Mm.
represented beauty. And even I was in Australia in 2019, and I couldn't believe every beauty campaign, every wellness campaign was a blonde, blue-eyed woman, even today, in this day and age.
Gosh,
And it was really surprising and a bit shocking, but it's
yeah,
a stereotype. So you really have got to think about, looking outwards, letting your mind travel. As Diana Vreeland said, the eye has to travel. You have to go and see things to stimulate new ideas.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I would say, hands down, for me, traveling and exploring different parts of the world has opened up my mind and inspired me in so many different ways. Fab. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the three pillars that I've distilled in my book. So the powerful network, having a strong portfolio, but also the mindset to get out there and create opportunities for yourself. And that's where things really move beyond fashion and styling, because it goes into knowing your worth, negotiating fees confidently, and also the big one, being able to say no when you're being completely taken advantage of in the fashion industry. I will also extend that to the music industry because I feel like that whole happens a lot there. But you've worked across fashion, media, and now you're doing a lot of high level strategy advisory and mergers and acquisitions. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to answer this question. For someone who is starting out today, what are the most important skills to develop early on? So, not necessarily related to fashion or styling, but related to building that self worth and building that confidence so that you can feel, strong when you show up to a meeting or go on set, and you can make sure that you're taken seriously and professionally.
I think one word comes to mind, and that's communication. You
Yeah.
really have got to develop communication skills, and that's not just how you talk. It's actually more important how you listen. We are very programmed to wait to respond when people speak to us because we want to get the answer out, or we want to show that we know what we're talking about, or we want to show that we are intelligent, or we get the question. We don't always listen to hear what the person is saying. And it's a really big problem, particularly in creative, because you'll hear people say, oh, you are just, getting information, but actually two people hearing the same thing will get totally different information because they weren't listening. Because when we're listening, if we're really listening, we hear what that person wants to say. And if you've ever had a brief from a client, as I'm sure you did, and as have I, and have given briefs, it's very important to remember how people communicate as well. Some people are more visually literate, some people are much more verbal. So, it's really communication and listening is so important. As somebody said, you have one mouth, you have two eyes, you have two ears, use them accordingly. And it's important that you sometimes do not speak. I always say, be the last person in the room to speak, and you learn so much. It's because it's so true. When you speak, you're only repeating things that you already know. But when you might find out something that you don't know. But the listening is really important. Also, going into the world, ask questions. Nobody knows everything ever. So always be open to learning. There's no such thing as a stupid question in my book. Now, some people don't necessarily feel that way, and we can be made to feel, oh, if you don't know something, you can be belittled, you can be, sidelined, you can be mocked. But actually, if you don't know something, ask the question, because you will regret it forever. Because how do you learn? So the communication, the listening, asking questions, remember that you are there to try to pick up and absorb everything that you possibly can. And you will learn something new every single day, as I do. You will learn something new, and keep that in your mind. I need to be able to find out something new today that I didn't know yesterday. So the communication to me, is actually the biggest thing that young people need to work on. Because we've gone through a very strange couple of years, with COVID. And we were isolated. Some people were, completely isolated individually by themselves for 18 months. And it has had a huge impact. I see it. So relearning to, be in a room in real life, communicating, talking without the phone is actually incredibly important. And I think we do have to relearn that. And I think we're all guilty of it. I'm terrible now with my phone, and I'm the first to admit, I try to read the Sunday papers. I try to read magazines. I'm one of those rare breeds. But I find myself picking up my phone in the middle of something to check somebody's on Instagram because I've seen something written about them in a feature in the FT Weekend or How to Spend It magazine or whatever. And then I fall in a rabbit hole and say, oh, I'll just check this and I'll check that. And then 20 minutes later, I'm still on my phone. No, put the phone down, pick up the newspaper, pick up a magazine, read something. Because I am 100% convinced that you learn differently by reading and writing something rather than reading something on a phone. And I always, still at this stage, try to read continuously. But that builds into the communication because you have a point of view, you have something to say, you learn, and then when you learn, back to our first question, you then have the ability to curate consciously. You can say, well, I've seen that, it doesn't work, or oh, that would be interesting, or those people do this, or why don't I try doing this, and why can't I do that, and why can't I change? And you then, you are using that to be slightly subversive, which is what a stylist should be. You've got to be different. You've got to have that USP. Otherwise, it just becomes bland. And we know keeping people's attention nowadays is one of the most difficult things. So get out there, be original, be subversive, but the communication, I think, is key.
Fantastic. So much gold in that, David. Thank you so, so much. So, where can people find you and follow you and tell us all about your podcast?
Well, just a fashion minute. it's actually 2 years in now. So you can find Just a Fashion Minute on all platforms. We've actually reached 40 countries so far in the last 2 years, which is fantastic. And we're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and almost every platform globally that you can find podcasts. So that's
Amazing.
we're on Instagram as well at Just a Fashion Minute. And I'm happy for people to connect with me through LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn loyal. I post every day on LinkedIn. So if you want to read about what's going on in fashion or the business or the industry or my thoughts on things, and it's my name, David M. Watts, on LinkedIn, as is my own Instagram account. So you can get me, most people can get me somewhere, some shape, some form on social media.
Amazing. It's been so wonderful to chat to you, David. Thank you so, so much.
It's great. And I hope some people got a few little nuggets of interest for their styling careers.
Oh, there's so much gold. And I can't wait to catch up with you in real life, not over a screen, in real life.
Coffee, definitely.
Absolutely.